So I'm Jeff Butler. I'm a filmmaker, storyteller, and I've been doing this since I was a little kid, and I've kind of grown with the technology. For a long time, film in particular uh, has never been something that someone could just pick up and do. There was always, whether it was you're filming on 16 millimeter, and we're also talking about quality here. Like, yes, you could have gone and gotten a VHS camcorder, mini DV camera, those small tapes, but the quality was never there. Not anything to make waves, and there are exceptions to that. But with with film and to be taken seriously, you would have had to shoot on 16, and you would have to get that developed, and then you would have had to edit it with actual film strips, with a linear editing system, not a non-linear editing system, and all of that took time. And the big thing was money. It put people in a position to where failing was no longer an option. With the way cameras have begun to develop and come into what we call the DSLR revolution, it changed how filmmakers and creatives in general could produce content. You didn't have to wait a while to get your film back, and you could get on the computer and it was accessible to find programs to edit your videos, and you could take risks and not worry about failing. What this is allowing is a whole new generation of filmmakers to tell a story and not worry too much about the cost. That cost can go into other things of production value. Or one day you have an idea and you go out with some friends and you shoot something. It doesn't have to be a fully scripted thing. It could be experimental film, and you can find your true style through that experimentation. Well, before you would have had to risk burning through reel after reel of film. Now you can just go take this and film and delete what you don't use. And that's huge. It may seem like a very small aspect of filmmaking, but that's a huge benefit to someone who's a creative, learning your style. And that's something that's benefited me since I was a kid, being able to just pick something up and go film. And for me personally, being able to go mimic styles of films that I had seen before. The market has become so saturated with films that it's hard to kind of sift through all this. And especially now with film festivals, a lot of that is all done online now. Like, you can still submit stuff physically, but for the most part you upload to websites like Without a Box, and you can submit to hundreds of festivals if you wanted to. Because Sundance now gets an insane amount of volume, Sundance being the big film festival that everyone knows of, or Tribeca, or South by Southwest, these things now have so many and become so saturated with films coming in. It's hard to feel like you can kind of pop out of that crowd. And that's not just the film festival side of it, but when you go to YouTube and you try and get your film out there so people can watch it, and it's very difficult to feel like you can kind of, rise above what other people have done. So that's tough, but it's also tough because now with the accessibility, which I think is a huge benefit, accessibility of being able to go do what you want to do with film, a lot of people, especially when we're talking about the professional world, whether it's commercials, now it's like, my niece or my nephew has a camera. Why can't they just film it? And they absolutely can. But now we're talking about expertise and understanding how a camera is operated, why it's operated, and why it runs the way it does, and certain environments you might be filming in that are difficult. If we're looking at what quality is being put out, we're seeing less and less quality because it's cheaper just to go with someone that who has a camera or an iPhone. But the benefit is now, if you do have that experience behind you and you want to go film something, you can. And it can look great. I mean, feature films are shot on iPhones now. Not all of them, obviously, but Tangerine came out. Sundance, I believe it was. That was shot completely on an iPhone. And at the end of the day, I think that's the big benefit, is because it's so accessible, you start to learn that it's not the equipment that's going to make you successful. It's all going to come down to telling a story. And that's what we're doing. You can't stand alone on your equipment anymore. You have to rise above that through your content, whether it's stories, whether you're a vlogger on YouTube, or whether you make commercials. art can be experienced exactly how the artist wants, and just be aware that where in the context in which it's being shown will influence the audience's perspective of what they're actually looking at. There's a difference between looking in a very quiet coffee shop at a painting that someone painted, or, standing on a subway platform while the subway rushes by. It's going to give them a very different feeling. I think there's something to be aware of when you're actually looking at something online. Like, we can all go Google the Mona Lisa, and we can be like, okay, that's a piece of art, that's great, but sometimes you're not going to see the detail, you're not going to see, the craftsmanship. There's something that kind of you begin to disassociate with art when you look through it through a digital lens sometimes. It's that experience of going to the museum, seeing it hang on the wall, and go, oh, look at the size of that thing. That's a part of that whole experience. Every little detail like that is part of that whole experience. If you want to go see Starry Night, you might be like, that's smaller than I thought it was. I see it on this, I see it online and it looks huge. It's smaller than I thought it was. It's really cool. There was this place in DeWitt where I grew up, and it was this old lawyer's house, and he had an attic, and he used to paint. He painted a ton, and it was just wall-to-wall stacks of paintings on canvas, and we got to experience his art in that space, which was kind of the special moment, because once that art leaves that attic, it's a whole new piece of art, and it's kind of amazing when you can experience art in a unique way. I think there is a danger for people who feel like they're experiencing actual life through like Instagram or any social media platform when they're living it through the eyes of someone else. I think that can be dangerous because you're not experiencing it even through the person who's taking the photo's eyes. They're literally taking that photo for your amusement. If you're looking through the eyes of a media influencer or just someone who went, you're still not experiencing the true form of art. And I think that's really important if you really care about it. But I also think that there's a huge positive to this is we're now, for instance, I grew up in a small town in Michigan. I don't think I would have as a kid gone and been able to experience the things that I've already seen at my age. I mean, I'm not saying I know those experiences, but I know these things exist. I'm able to go online and do, a click around tour on the Coliseum. Like, that's crazy. You say that 20, 30 years ago, you looked in a book and it was like, okay, that's the experience you got. But now you kind of can curate your own experience going through these places digitally. I think that's important for education. I think that's important for people who want to go out and see the world. But I don't think we should believe that that's the whole experience. I think going into it with that mindset is dangerous, because then we can just say the internet is just our experience anyway.